Hello, welcome to part 3 of the behind the scenes of how I built the 10-gallon Dripwall terrarium. This is the second of 3 parts about creating the foundation of the terrarium. In this one, we're going to continue the hardscape and foam. We're going to begin coating the wall with wicking fabric, and we're going to add more drip lines. Let's get started. The next step was to start looking at how I'm going to cover the walls with Hygrolon. This is Hygrolon. It's essentially a synthetic mesh fabric that is hydrophilic, which means that it attracts and wicks water. I wanted to cover the entire side and back walls of the tank with Hygrolon because I knew that it would spread the water out and let everything stay really wet, and then it would offer an excellent substrate for liverworts and moss and plants to grab onto the tank walls. I went ahead and got a bunch of Hygrolon here. I'll show you a close-up. This is the Hygrolon. Basically microscopic plastic strands woven into a specific pattern that wicks water. Anyway, it's a great fabric. I don't want to go too much into it, but I highly recommend it for builds, and I use it on a lot of different terrariums. This Gorilla Contact Adhesive Clear Grip is a really great glue. I use this because it's clear and it is essentially waterproof once it is cured. I use that to adhere the Hygrolon to the walls of the tank. When working with anything that has fumes and chemicals that are harmful, I always wear a respirator. This is the 3M P95 respirator that I have. It's really comfortable and it's inexpensive. I highly recommend this mask. So I wear that, and then I wear nitrile gloves to protect my hands. I use these Dynarex blue exam gloves. These are really nice as well. So wear your safety equipment, especially when you're working for long periods of time like I was with this Gorilla Glue clear adhesive and putting that Hygrolon on. I was working on that for significant blocks of time, like perhaps up to maybe even an hour at a time, and then the fumes stick around as well. So definitely want to, wear protective gear. So as you can see, I have the wall of the tank, and this is where all of the foam is cured. And I left the foam with texture like this. I wanted it to be all textured. I didn't want to carve it because I knew that when I put the Hygrolon on, I would form it against that, and then it would have a cool rippled texture that would look more natural, and instead of being just like flat or smooth or whatever, it would have some character to it and it would look more natural. So I went ahead and took a bunch of that Gorilla Clear Grip adhesive and I smeared that all over with a silicone brush, and then I pushed the Hygrolon against that glue with my fingers, wearing nitrile gloves of course, and then I took all of these pins and I put the pins in at an angle and kind of pressed them downward and in so that it would hold these crevices. So essentially, when I put this pin in, I pushed down against the fabric and then slid the pin in, and that would hold the fabric into that crevice. And you can see how I kind of pushed down and in all these different locations. That made it so that the glue could cure with the Hygrolon formed to this shape. Did some more of that down here, and I kind of worked in clusters and groups, different areas across the tank. So here's a wider shot of the tank in process. What I did is I glued the Hygrolon on up here and let it cure a little bit, and then I would lift this up and put more and work my way down, and that way it was secure before I started gluing further down, because if you just keep trying to do it all at once before it's cured, it's just going to pull it off. This right here is what I was telling you earlier. As you can see, the drip line comes down through here. This is the thicker protective vinyl hose that I have, and then this is the air line that I got from the aquarium air pump hose. And so I had this piece come down, and then I split it off and created 2 different outlets for dripping so that I could position those and have water dripping where I wanted them down here, so that when I put the final piece of wood on top, there would be water coming out from underneath it. There's another shot just showing some detail of the pieces of wood, and I have the foam in there. Another shot. I had just put some foam in there and it's expanding in, and you can tell that it's curing around there. This shot is where I have put the foam in on top of that main drip line and locked it in place, and then I have this coming down, and this is where these drip out from there. So you can see I'm building up the structure and getting a lot closer to getting ready to put the other wood in and continue to add more. Here's the other side with some more Hygrolon attachment, and you can see I did quite a bit of work here with a lot of glue and a lot of pins and a lot of forming against the wall. This took a really long time. This was a lot of hard work. Here you can see I did a lower portion of Hygrolon, and then I did another piece up here and overlapped it. You can see the cutoff right here, but I overlapped it so you wouldn't really see it. Here I attached the Hygrolon to the glass itself because I did not want the foam to come all the way up to the front edge of the tank. I wanted to make sure that the Hygrolon wraps around and then goes flush to the glass, and then there's a gap between the front of the Hygrolon and the front of the tank so that I don't risk water wrapping around and coming outside of the tank. So what I did is I went on the back side of this glass. This isn't the greatest photo, but I took a black marker and I looked on the outside of the tank and I kind of drew a dashed line of where the fabric would end up, and that way when I put the glue onto the glass on the inside, I could visually see that line, and I could just put the glue up to that line and not past it. And then when I pushed the Hygrolon against the glass and against the glue, that way the glue doesn't come beyond it. Now the tank is starting to come together more. You can see that both of the walls are almost complete. There's still a bit more gluing to be done, but you can see the Hygrolon really coming together here, and I started adding Hygrolon in between the wood and cracks to cover up these things. So I just cut little pieces that would kind of fit in there, and then I just put more of the clear adhesive glue and then just pressed in the Hygrolon. Now this is where I put the final piece of wood on top, and I used some epoxy to lock that piece of wood in because it's heavy, and I wanted to lock that in there and make sure that it never slid off. So I put some 5-minute epoxy in there, which I'll show you in just a second, but I put that on the wood, and I was lucky in that the layout of the wood that I had happened to come where these two pieces of wood kind of interlocked together anyway. So as luck would have it, they just locked in place, but I added this epoxy just to add extra strength and make myself feel better. So I just used this DevCon epoxy. It may have been 5-minute or it may have been 1 minute or whatever. I have a bunch of different ones, and they're really useful for the kind of things that I do. So I recommend epoxies. They're really great. Okay, and now here is the tank again coming together more. There's the final piece of wood in on top. Then I started playing around with these branches and twigs and stuff because I wanted it to look like roots or branches or something just sticking out from all of this to make it look more natural and have a bit more interest. So I was playing around with those. Here's another angle, just showing some more playing around with that. And now this is how I attached those roots in there. I put the clear grip adhesive, again I was using the Gorilla clear grip, and I just put some in there, and then I just used pins to hold that in place. Just put the pins underneath and at angles and just kind of hold the wood in there until the glue cures. Here's where I'm working more with the drip system, and I added more barbs and more air hose for the drip lines. I left these longer because I was not 100% sure where the Hygrolon would come down to when I put it over the top of this, and I wasn't sure where the drip lines would go, and I just wanted to leave it longer because I can always cut it shorter later. So I messed around with these, started adding drip lines. Here's some more over here. Have one coming down so that it would rest on top of that top piece of wood, and that way I could ensure that there's water definitely dripping down over that wood just to be extra sure that I get it where I want it.